Good morning, Year 2. It's Tuesday morning and it's time for story time. We pick up in chapter 5 today of the Littlest Viking. The children had gone through with their plan to stop everyone from wanting to sell the garden, and it seems to have worked when they scared Mr. Gray with the berserks. So chapter 5, The Great Little Dragon Ship. The average Viking house in Amber's hometown was made of dirt, with grass growing on the roof and windows at either end covered with the see-through membrane of a calf's birth sack. This may not seem too attractive to you and me, and was probably a nightmare to clean, but to Amber, the hammer of the north, it was home. She had been living with Katie, Gary and Joshua for over a week now, and however much she loved her new friends, she couldn't help feeling homesick. "I have to go home," she announced, the morning after the children had saved the garden. Joshua, who had been pretending he was leading a parade around the large gorse bush, stopped in his tracks. "You're leaving," he whispered. "Don't you like us anymore?" Now, said Amber, let's not have any misunderstandings, or you'll finish up like the squire's bride. I didn't say I didn't like you anymore. It's just that, well, I miss my family and it's time for me to sail home." "But your boat's all smashed up in the cave," said Gary, trying to be practical to cover up how he felt. Katie frowned. "I suppose there's always the dragon boat." Amber and the three children set off to have a look, and on the way the little Viking told them the story of the squire's bride. "It seems there was once an incredibly rich squire." "What's a squire?" asked Joshua. "A sort of rich country gentleman," explained his sister. "We don't really have them anymore." Amber nodded. This one was so rich he could have anything that he wanted, probably ate mounds of peanut butter and never worried about the heating bills. Yet there were two things he didn't have. The first thing was good looks, and the second, because of the first, was a wife. However, because he was so rich, the squire foolishly thought that anyone would be delighted to marry him. One day the daughter of the farmer next door came to deliver some eggs. She was very lovely, and the squire decided he would marry her. "I have decided to get married," he announced to her as she put down her basket. "Well, the world is full of wonders," said the girl, trying to imagine who would marry such an ugly old man. The squire saw she hadn't understood. "I have decided to marry you." The girl looked at him. "The world is full of wonders," she said, "but marrying me is not one of them. I will not marry you." And she went home. This was quite a shock to the squire. No one ever said no to him. He asked the girl's father to speak to her, but she just laughed and said she would never marry the squire. The squire sent presents and flowers, and still the girl laughed and said she would never marry him. The squire was beginning to get a bit desperate and asked the girl's father what he should do. He knew that the farmer wanted his daughter to marry the squire because he was so rich and the farmer was so very poor. "Why don't you prepare for the wedding?" said the father, shooing away a tiresome pig. "When everything is ready, send for my daughter, as if you want her to come and do some work. Then when she arrives, marry her quickly, before she has time to realise what is going on." The squire thought this was a great idea. He arranged a huge wedding feast and invited lots of guests. When everyone had arrived, the squire shouted to one of the stable lads. "Go to the farmer next door," he cried, "and have him send up what he promised." The boy ran next door and spoke to the farmer. "My master sent me to get what's been promised," he said. The farmer nodded. "She's down in the meadow, help yourself," and he went back to his pigs. The boy ran down to the meadow where he met the beautiful daughter. "Hello," said the lad. "I've come to fetch what your father promised to my master. He said it's in the meadow." The girl looked round. Apart from her, the only thing in the meadow was a small white mare. "It must be that horse," she said to the boy. "Help yourself." And so the boy took the mare back to his master. The squire was getting into a terrible state waiting for his bride. "Did you bring her?" he shouted at the boy. "She's standing out by the door," said the lad. "Well, don't just stand there," screamed the squire. "Take her up to the guest bedroom." "That won't be easy," said the boy. "Just do it," bellowed the squire, trying to button his best shirt. "Get some help if she's difficult." The squire threw a boot at the boy as he ran out into the yard. The small white horse was a nice creature, but she'd never been upstairs in a house before and didn't want to move. In the end, it took 6 farmhands and a dairymaid to push and pull her up the stairs and into the bedroom, where the bride's dress lay waiting. The boy went back to the squire. "I've done it, master," he panted, "but it was a terrible job." "Is she dressed?" asked the squire, battling with his jacket. "Well, no," replied the stable boy, rather surprised at the question. "Well, get her dressed then," sputtered the squire. "Do I have to tell you everything?" And he threw his other boot at the boy. The boy sighed and wondered if this job was worth all the trouble. The horse wasn't too keen on the wedding dress, but at last the boy managed to get it on her and even put a garland of flowers around her head. "I'm ready," called the squire. "Bring her down." The boy hadn't managed to put the shoes on the mare, who clattered down the stairs with a terrible noise. How the wedding guests laughed when the squire came face to face with his bride. "So you see," said Amber, "if you let a misunderstanding go too far, it can lead you into terrible trouble. I'm not leaving because I don't like you, but because it is time for me to go home." "What happened to the horse?" asked Joshua. "I think the squire took a liking to her, and they lived happily ever after, although—" Amber paused in mid-sentence.